You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains.
Founded in 1871, the NRA triumphantly promoted the safe use and ownership of guns. However, in the 1970s, their ideals fundamentally changed, as it has become a powerful pro-gun legislative political force that works to weaken the efforts for gun control. This change in policy from an organization that was once the preeminent voice for gun safety has proven to be a tragedy to American citizens, who are constantly suffering from the harmful acts of gun violence.
The NRA was founded in New York City in 1871 by former Union officers William Conant Church and George Wood Wingate. After observing the official Union Army statistics from the Civil War that estimated 1,000 bullets were fired for every Confederate soldier hit, they became concerned about the lack of proper firearm training and incapability to safely use weapons. Consequently, they were granted a charter by the state of New York, causing the official formation of the NRA.
We may not yet have reached our glory, but I will gladly join the fight.
At this time, the NRA was solely focused on training hunters to shoot more accurately and encouraging responsible gun ownership. The U.S. Army even donated an abundance of rifles, which served as a large boost to the organization during the first years it was founded. The organization continued to expand throughout the late 19th century, creating new clubs throughout the country while the number of members grew.
It was there. Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere?
In its first years, the NRA purchased a farm on Long Island with the help of the state of New York to build a rifle range. They named it Creedmoor and held their first annual matches there.
No one would hear.
Well, let that lonely feeling wash away.
In the early 1900s, the NRA launched their monthly magazine called The American Rifleman in hopes of attracting more youth to shooting sports.
During the Prohibition era in the 1930s, Franklin Roosevelt, the current U.S. president at the time, became increasingly concerned as gun violence was starting to become more prevalent in the lives of American citizens. Because of this, the NRA managed to have a significant impact in the passing of the 1934 National Firearms Act and later, in 1938, in the Federal Firearms Act, which marked the first U.S. federal gun control laws. These laws taxed firearms such as machine guns and short-barreled rifles, required gun owners to register firearms through the federal government, and banned felons from owning weapons.
During the passing of this legislation, Carl T. Frederick, president of the NRA at the time, quoted before Congress, "I have never believed in the general practice of carrying weapons. I do not believe in the general promiscuous toting of guns. I think it should be sharply restricted and only under licenses." For the next 30 years, the NRA remained in support of gun control and safe gun ownership, but soon began to fundamentally alter their ideals in the late 1960s.
Through the 1960s, crime rates began to rise and the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. transpired, which provoked discussions regarding gun availability and restrictions due to citizens' concern over their personal safety. Because of this, Congress initiated a revision of gun control laws that had been originally established, and with the help from the NRA, generated the Gun Control Act of 1968, regulating the entirety of the firearm industry and the individual gun ownership.
Franklin Orth, who was an NRA executive at the time, stated that the portions of a law were, quote, unduly restrictive, the measure as a whole appears to be one that the sportsmen of America can live with.
During this same time period, because of the growth of gun violence, some concerned citizens turned to guns for self-protection and safety. From this time on, gun sales increased consistently.
In 1975, handguns became a large focus of the congressional talk, and in terms of safety and personal protection, the NRA created its first lobbying arm, the Institution for Legislative Action, also known as the ILA. It was one of the most influential arms of the NRA and is still around today, as it's committed to preserving the rights of citizens to buy guns and use guns. To many, this is seen as a big turning point in the NRA. However, while this is happening, a member of the NRA who was later discovered to be hiding a large number of illegal guns was shot and killed, thus provoking the leader of the ILA, Harlan Carter, to famously quote, "You don't stop crime by attacking guns, you stop crime by stopping criminals." Soon after, in 1977, members of the ILA became fed up with promoting marksmanship and wanted to become more involved with the political spectrum instead, causing a large division in the NRA. One side focused on hunting and marksmanship, while the other defended the Second Amendment and focused on protecting citizens' rights to bear arms.
Months later, during the 1977 NRA convention in Cincinnati, Ohio, the NRA's representatives were said to be, quote, motivated by the belief that guns weren't primarily for hunting, but for personal protection in an era of rising crime rates. The hardliners staged a coup at the annual meeting of the membership, outing the old leaders and committing the organization to political advocacy. This essentially indicated that the political side had, quote, won and soon revolutionized, becoming what we know now to be the NRA, led by the very own Harlan Carter. This shift was only the beginning of the NRA's reign of power. Following this change, the NRA began to take part in candidacies at the state and federal level. From becoming so involucrated in the firearms field and consequently gaining so much political superiority, the NRA soon gained the ability to enforce pro-gun legislation and prevent gun control efforts. Even Harlan Carter mentioned that the NRA is, quote, so strong and so dedicated that no politician in America, mindful of his political career, would want to challenge our legitimate goals. Today, the organization treats those words as its mantra, constantly citing them.
This position that the NRA achieved over gun laws and ownership inevitably and tragically forced U.S. citizens to live in lethal and fearful societies. As of today, the NRA has 5 million members and is among one of the most feared and effective players not only in Washington, but all 50 state capitals. The organization has a, quote, anchored opposition in every major gun-related debate ever since it altered its main aim from marksmanship to, quote, hard-edged political activism.
However, now that the NRA has enough power to put forth pro-gun legislation, as well as to stop efforts at gun control, the organization has set out on a mission to, quote, defeat the divisive purposes that would take freedom away, such as gun control reform. Today, in our modern world, gun violence is a widely controversial and disputed issue. As of March 18th, there have already been 2,847 gun deaths in the year 2019. This includes 61 mass shootings and an additional 4,964 injuries. In 2018, there were 14,641 deaths and 28,161 injuries due to guns.
Gun violence is an extremely prevalent issue to this day due to the fact that many Americans have a firm belief in maintaining the Second Amendment and that guns serve as a benefit for security purposes, while the rest of the population focuses on the fact that guns only bring a greater threat to the U.S. As it can be seen, the NRA stands on the side that strongly believes in defending the Second Amendment, thus losing their previous focus on gun safety and control.
Time coming that I had to say. When I wake up in the morning, all I do is pray for some guidance and protection on the streets today, and an answer to the questions I ask every day. So tell me, why did the birds that used to fly here? Tell me, why do they come to die here? And all the kids that used.
In summary, it seems as though the NRA is losing its grip on reality. From being so fixated on the ideal to protect citizens' right to the Second Amendment and encouraging safe gun ownership to becoming intolerant to any modern gun reform and not acting upon the thousands of deaths that occur outside of the closed-minded organization. The NRA persists supporting unrealistic arguments such as to why guns should remain as available as they are today. It can be observed that all these arguments all stem from the NRA's original ideals. Thus, they are unwilling to accept any new proposal or form of change that is proposed.
From the tops of the buildings to the streets below, between the Wall Street banks and the empty homes, between the lines of the people standing all in a row, there's a crack in the gutter where a flower grows, reminding me that everything is possible. Yeah, reminding me that nothing is impossible. You gotta live for the one that you love, you know. You gotta love for the life